No one ignored our prayers until the Earth unleashed demons Part 1. The silent stars for 300 years. Humanity had been sending messages into space. Scientists pointed their radio dishes at the stars and sent greetings in every language. They used mathematics, music, and pictures. They begged the universe to answer. But the universe stayed quiet. The stars gave nothing back. Many people started to believe that humans were alone. That Earth was the only world with life. That the silence would last forever. They were wrong. The ships appeared on Tuesday morning in March of 2187. Park. Do-hyun was drinking coffee in the underground military base near Busan when the alarms started screaming. He was a captain in the Korean Aerospace Defense Command, 42 years old, with gray starting to show in his hair. He had spent 20 years watching empty skies. Now those skies were full. How many? He asked his communications officer, Lieutenant Yoon Hana. She was young, barely 30, with steady hands that were shaking for the first time since he had known her. Her screen showed red dots appearing over every continent. Hundreds of them. Then thousands. Too many to count, sir. They're everywhere? Seoul, Tokyo, Beijing, New York, London. Every major city on Earth. Do-hyun walked to the main display and watched the footage coming from satellites. The ships were massive, each one larger than a mountain. They blocked out the sun wherever they flew. They were beautiful in a terrible way, covered in lights that pulsed like heartbeats. The message came 2 hours later. It was broadcast on every frequency, in every language, as if the aliens had been listening to humanity for years and learning how to speak. People of Earth, we are the hegemony. We are a coalition of 12 species from across the galaxy. Your world has been selected for harvest. You will surrender your population for labor redistribution. Resistance will result in extinction. You have 24 hours to comply. Do-hyun felt the words hit him like punches. Labor redistribution. They meant slavery. They meant taking every human being and sending them to work on alien worlds. They meant the end of everything humanity had built. They can't be serious, Hana said. Look at those ships, Do-hyun replied. They're very serious. The world's leaders tried to negotiate. The President of the United States offered resources. The European Union offered technology. China offered workers from their own population, hoping to save the rest. None of it mattered. The hegemony was not interested in deals. They had done this before, on hundreds of worlds. Humanity was not special to them. Humans were just another species to be collected. When the 24 hours ended, the hegemony demonstrated their power. They chose a small city in Australia, a place called Darwin, and they erased it. One beam of light from one ship, and 200,000 people were gone. The city became glass and ash in less than a second. After that, the government surrendered. Do-hyun watched the collapse happen from his bunker. He saw the announcements from terrified leaders telling their people to cooperate. He saw the transport ships landing in fields and parking lots, their doors opening like hungry mouths. He saw families being separated, children screaming for parents, old people being pushed into lines. They're treating us like animals, Hana said. Her voice was dead, empty. To them, we are animals, Do-hyun answered. The harvest began immediately. The hegemony soldiers were efficient and cruel. They sorted humans by age, health, and skills. The young and strong were taken first. The old and sick were left behind, considered useless. Some people fought back, but their guns and bombs did nothing against alien armor. Some people ran and hid in forests and mountains and underground shelters. The hegemony hunted them slowly, knowing there was nowhere to escape. In the first week, 1 billion humans were taken from Earth. Do-hyun kept his team together in the Busan bunker. They were too deep underground for the aliens to detect easily, and the hegemony seemed in no hurry. They had time. They always had time. Worlds did not escape their harvest, but Dohyun was not ready to give up. He was a soldier, and soldiers fought, even when fighting seemed impossible. "We need to find other survivors," he told Hana. "Other military units. Anyone who's still resisting. And then what?" She asked. "We have nothing that can hurt them. Then we find something that can." The message came from Daejin 3 days later. An old general named Baek Sunwoo had gathered survivors in a bunker complex outside the city. He was 73 years old and had refused to surrender. With him was a small group of scientists, soldiers, and civilians who believed that humanity could still fight. Dohyun and Hana made the journey underground, using old tunnels built during the wars of the previous century. When they arrived, they found a woman waiting for them. Her name was Dr. Kim Yoonji, and she was a geologist who studied the deep earth. She looked like she had not slept in days. Her eyes were wild with something that might have been fear or might have been excitement. "Captain Park," she said, "I need to show you something." She led them to a room full of screens displaying seismic data. Graphs and charts covered the walls, showing readings from sensors buried deep beneath the Korean peninsula. "I've been monitoring underground activity since the invasion began," Eunji explained. "At first, I thought it was just earthquakes. Stress from the alien ships, maybe. But the patterns are wrong. These aren't natural." She pointed at a screen showing a large mass moving slowly at a depth of 50 kilometers. It was enormous, bigger than any creature that had ever lived, and it was rising. "What is that?" Dohyun asked. Yoonji's voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't know. But there are thousands of them down there. And they're waking up." Hana stepped closer to the screen. "Waking up? From what?" "From whatever sleep they've been in for thousands of years. Maybe millions." Yoonji pulled up old files on another screen. Ancient drawings, cave paintings, religious texts from cultures around the world. They all showed the same thing: monsters, demons, creatures of darkness that live beneath the earth. "Every culture has legends about them," Yoonji said. "The Koreans called them Dokebi and Guishin. The Japanese called them Oni. The Europeans called them demons. We always thought they were just stories, myths to scare children." She looked at them with eyes that held a strange hope. What if they weren't myths? What if something really does live down there? And what if the suffering of 8 billion people is finally loud enough to wake it up? Dohyun stared at the screen, watching the massive shape rise slowly through the rock. He thought about the alien ships above, so confident in their power. He thought about the humans being loaded onto transports like cattle, and he wondered what the hegemony would do when they discovered that humanity was not alone on this planet. No one ignored our prayers until the Earth unleashed Demons Part 2. What sleeps beneath the bunker, beneath Daejin, became humanity's last hope. General Baek Sunwoo gathered every survivor he could find. Soldiers who had escaped the harvest. Scientists who had hidden in laboratories. Ordinary people who refused to become slaves. They numbered less than 300, but they were alive and they were angry. Dr. Kim Yoonji worked without rest, studying the seismic readings that showed impossible things moving in the deep earth. Every hour, the shapes rose higher. Every hour, more of them woke from their ancient sleep. She counted over 4,000 separate entities spread across the planet, all rising toward the surface. They respond to human emotion, she told the gathered survivors one night. Fear, pain, desperation. The stronger we feel, the faster they rise. It's like they can hear us somehow. Like our suffering is a signal they've been waiting for. A young soldier named Shin Mira spoke up. She was 24 years old, with short hair and hard eyes. 3 days ago, She had watched her parents and younger brother get loaded onto an alien transport. She had been hiding in a drainage ditch, too far away to help, too scared to move. The guilt was eating her alive. If they respond to suffering, Myra said, then they must be feeding on it. What makes you think they'll help us? What if they're just more monsters? Yoonji had no good answer. She had been asking herself the same question. General Beak stepped forward. He was old and tired, but his voice was still strong. Everything is a risk now. The hegemony will finish harvesting us in a few months. After that, Earth will be empty. If there's any chance these things might fight the aliens, we have to try. But how do we even contact them? Asked Yoonhana. They're 50 kilometers underground. The answer came from an unexpected source. A monk named Cho Taiwan had arrived at the bunker 2 days earlier, walking alone through the mountains with nothing but the robes on his back. He was 70 years old, the keeper of a Buddhist temple that had stood for over 1,000 years. The temple had old books that spoke of rituals. Our ancestors knew about these beings, Taiwan said softly. They fought them long ago, drove them into the deep places, and sealed them there with prayers and blood. The rituals to bind them still exist in fragments. Perhaps the rituals to call them exist as well. Captain Park Do-yeon looked skeptical. You're talking about magic, spells and ceremonies. I'm talking about knowledge we've forgotten, Taiwan replied. The universe is stranger than science alone can explain. These creatures exist outside normal physics. Perhaps communication with them requires methods that also exist outside normal physics. They argued for hours. Scientists against believers. Logic against faith. But in the end, they had nothing else. Their weapons couldn't hurt the hegemony. Their technology was worthless. Prayer and ritual were all that remained. Taiwan spent 3 days preparing. He gathered old texts from abandoned temples, downloading digital copies from servers that still functioned. He studied Korean shamanic traditions, Buddhist sutras, and ancient poems that spoke of darkness and fire. Slowly, he assembled a ceremony from fragments. It won't be pleasant, he warned them. The old rituals required sacrifice, blood and pain to open the door. Voices raised in genuine desperation. We cannot fake this. We must truly call out, truly beg, and truly offer something of ourselves. 20 volunteers stepped forward. Mira was among them. So was Yoonji. Da-hyun wanted to join, but Taiwan refused. You are a leader, the monk said. Leaders must stay above to guide what comes next. This task falls to those who have nothing left to lose. They traveled to Jurisan Mountain, using underground paths to avoid hegemony patrols. Deep beneath the mountain was a cave system that humans had used for ceremonies 10,000 years ago. The walls were covered in paintings so old that no one remembered who had made them. The paintings showed figures with too many eyes, shapes that twisted in ways nature never intended. Monsters, or perhaps gods. The line between the two had always been thin. Taiwan arranged the volunteers in a circle. He gave each of them a small knife and a bowl. Then he began to chant in a language that predated Korean, predated any language that still existed. The words felt wrong in the air, like they were pushing against reality itself. Now, Taiwan said, cut your palms. Let your blood flow, and call out with your hearts. Think of everyone you've lost, everyone who's suffering. Let that pain become your voice. Myra pressed the knife into her hand. The pain was sharp and clean. Blood dripped into the bowl, hot and red. Around her, the others did the same. She thought of her mother's face as the aliens dragged her away. She thought of her brother screaming her name. She thought of every human being on Earth, crying out for help that never came. And she screamed, not a sound from her throat. A scream from somewhere deeper. From her heart, her soul, whatever part of her was more than just flesh and bone. The others screamed with her. 20 voices becoming one voice. 20 hearts breaking together. The cave shook. The temperature dropped so fast that their breath became fog. The paintings on the walls seemed to move, the monstrous figures turning their heads toward the circle. The ground cracked beneath them, and something pushed up from below. Darkness came first. Not the absence of light, but darkness as a thing, a presence, a living force that filled the cave and pressed against their minds. Then came the eyes, hundreds of them, opening in the darkness like stars being born. Each eye was different. Some were human, some were animal, some were things that had no name. A voice spoke, and it was not a sound but a pressure, a meaning that forced itself into their thoughts. Why do you call us children of the sun? Your kind betrayed yous, hunted yous, drove yous into the deep dark where nitrogen monoxide light reaches. For 10,000 years we have slept and hated and waited. Taiwan fell to his knees. The force of the voice was too strong to stand against. But Mira stayed on her feet. Her hatred for the hegemony was stronger than her fear of anything else. Because we need you, she said. Because something worse than your hatred has come. They're taking us. All of us. They'll empty this world and move on to the next. You'll be alone here, with nothing but empty cities and silence. The darkness swirled. The eyes blinked. The Star Walkers. We feel them above. Their ships burn with cold fire. They do not know what waits beneath. Help us stop them, Yunji said, blood still dripping from her palm. And we'll give you whatever you want. What we want is freedom. What we want is to walk beneath the sky again. To hunt. To feed. Your ancestors denied yous this. Our ancestors are dead, Myra said. We're not them. We don't want to be your enemies. We want to be your allies. The darkness was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, the voice was different, curious, almost hungry. An alliance? How interesting. Very well. Children of the sun, we will hear your terms. But know this, if you betray you as your ancestors did, there will be nitrogen monoxide placed in any world where you can hide from our wrath. Myra looked at the others. Their faces were pale with terror, but none of them ran. None of them took back their offer. We understand, she said. Now let's talk about how to destroy the hegemony. In the darkness beneath the mountain, something that had slept for 10,000 years finally smiled. No one ignored our prayers until the Earth unleashed demons Part 3. The awakening commander Ru Ji-wan was 40 years old when the world ended. She had served in the Korean Navy for 18 years, commanding ships that guarded the waters around the peninsula. When the hegemony arrived, her ship was destroyed in the first hour. She survived by swimming to shore and hiding in fishing villages for 2 weeks. Now she led a small group of resistance fighters on the East Coast, hitting alien patrols and disappearing before reinforcements arrived. It was meaningless work. Every patrol they destroyed was replaced within hours. Every human they saved was eventually caught again. But Ji-wan kept fighting because she didn't know how to do anything else. 3 days after the ceremony, beneath Jirisan Mountain, she was watching the sea when it began to boil. The water churned and rose in massive waves. Steam erupted from the surface as something enormous pushed upward from the deep ocean floor. Ji-wan grabbed her radio and called her team to fall back, certain that the hegemony had unleashed some new weapon. Then she saw it rise. It was not a machine. It was not anything she had words for. A mountain of shadow and teeth and eyes, dripping with seawater and the darkness between stars. It was bigger than any ship she had ever seen. Parts of it seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions, twisting in ways that hurt her mind to look at. And it was beautiful. Terrible and beautiful, like a storm or an earthquake or any other force of nature that could kill without malice. A hegemony patrol ship moved to intercept. G1 watched its weapons charge, bright beams of energy that had melted human cities in seconds. The beams hit the creature and did nothing. They passed through it like light through smoke. Then the creature moved, faster than anything that Psi should be able to move, and the patrol ship was simply gone. Not destroyed. Gone. Swallowed into the darkness that made up the creature's body. 17 seconds. That was how long the hegemony ship survived. G1's radio crackled. A voice she didn't recognize spoke in calm Korean. "Commander Ru, please do not be afraid. We have been sent to find you. The Covenant requires a speaker, and you have been chosen." "Chosen? By what? Who are you?" "My name is Shin Mira. I was at the ritual. The entities, they can feel you. Your anger. Your refusal to surrender. They want to talk to someone who still fights. They want to talk to you." G1 looked at the creature floating offshore. More shapes were rising around it now. Smaller entities, though smaller still meant bigger than buildings. They gathered like an army waiting for orders. "What do they want from me?" she asked. "They want a deal," Myra replied. "They'll help us destroy the hegemony. But they want something in return. You need to negotiate the terms." 3 hours later, G1 stood on the rocky shore of Alumdo Island, facing the largest entity. It had drifted closer to land, and now its eyes looked down at her from a height of 200 meters. She felt small, smaller than she had ever felt in her life. But she did not run. "I am Commander Ru G1," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. "I speak for humanity." The pressure of the entity's thoughts pressed into her mind. "Why should we help your kind? Your ancestors imprisoned you, hunted you with fire and iron and prayers. We owe you nothing." "You're right," G1 agreed. "Our ancestors wronged you. I won't pretend otherwise. But I'm not asking you to forgive us. I'm asking you to consider your own survival." "Our survival?" G1 pointed at the sky, where hegemony ships hung like dark clouds. "Those ships come from a coalition that has conquered 1,000 worlds. They don't just take people. They take everything. Resources, water, atmosphere. When they're done with Earth, this planet will be a dead rock. Nothing will live here. Not humans, not animals, not even you." The entity was silent. Its many eyes blinked slowly. "We could burrow deeper, hide in the core where they cannot reach. Could you? They have technology that can crack planets open. They've done it before, to worlds that resisted too hard. If you hide, they'll find you eventually. But if you fight now, while they're not expecting it, you might actually win. And if we win, what then? Do your kind try to bind you again?" This was the moment. G1 had thought about it during the journey to the island. What could humanity offer beings that had been betrayed once already? What promise would they believe? "If we win," she said slowly, "we share the world. You walk free under the sky. You go where you want, do what you want. We won't hunt you. We won't bind you. Earth becomes a home for both of us. You would share your world with monsters?" G1 smiled grimly. "After what the hegemony has done, I'm not sure humans have the right to call anything else a monster. At least you're honest about what you are. They pretended to be civilized while loading children onto slave ships." The entity made a sound that might have been laughter. It echoed across the water like thunder. "We like you. Speaker, you have fire in your heart. Very well. We will accept your covenant. But know this, a covenant is sealed in blood and cannot be broken. If your kind betrays you again, we will devour every human on every world until none remain." "I understand. Then give us your hand." G1 extended her arm. Something reached out from the entity's darkness. a limb that was part tentacle, part claw, part smoke. It wrapped around her hand, and pain exploded through her body. She felt something burn itself into her mind, into her soul. A mark, a connection. She could suddenly feel all the entities, thousands of them, waiting beneath the earth and sea. She could feel their hunger and their rage and their ancient, patient hatred, but she could also feel something else. Respect, the beginning of trust. "It's done," the entity said. "The covenant is sealed. Now, speaker, tell you, so what would you have us do?" G1 pointed at the hegemony command ship hanging in orbit, visible even during the day as a dark spot against the blue sky. "Start with that one." The entity rose higher, its body spreading across the sky like a second night falling. Other entities joined it, pouring out of the sea and erupting from the earth. They moved upward, toward the stars, toward the ships that had thought themselves invincible. And for the first time since the invasion began, G1 heard something new on the hegemony. Communication channels. Fear. The aliens were afraid. She stood on the shore and watched the sky fill with shadows, and she allowed herself to hope. The covenant was sealed. The demons were awake, and the hegemony was about to learn that humanity had never been alone on this world. They had just been the only ones awake. No one ignored our prayers until the earth unleashed. Demons Part 4. The Reckoning. Admiral Vethko had conquered 37 worlds in her career. She was considered one of the finest military minds in the hegemony, a commander who had never lost a battle. Her species, the Crocian, were tall and thin, with gray skin and forearms that moved with mechanical precision. They felt no fear. Their brains had evolved without the chemicals that cause panic in lesser species. This made them perfect soldiers, but standing on the bridge of her command ship, watching the tactical display turn red with losses, Admiral Vethko felt something she had never experienced before. A cold sensation in her stomach, a tightness in her chest. Her crew looked at her with wide eyes, waiting for orders she didn't have. "What are those things?" she demanded. Her xenobiologist, a small creature named Dreth, trembled at his station. "Unknown, Admiral. They don't match any species in our database. Their biology, I'm not even sure they have biology. They seem to exist partially outside normal space. Our weapons pass through them without effect." "That's impossible." "Yes, Admiral. And yet 17 of our capital ships have been destroyed in the last 4 hours." Vethko watched another ship vanish from the display. The destroyer Ironwill, crew of 800, gone in seconds. The entities didn't fight like normal enemies. They didn't dodge or take cover or retreat. They simply moved through the hegemony fleet like wind through grass, and everything they touched died. "Pull back to high orbit," Vethko ordered. "Prepare the extinction protocols. If we can't have this planet, we'll destroy it, Admiral." Dreth's voice was barely a whisper. "The entities are following our retreating ships. They're not staying near the planet. They're pursuing us." On the display, shadows moved between the stars. The entities had left Earth's atmosphere and were now hunting in space. They moved without ships, without engines, without any visible means of propulsion. They simply existed in one place and then existed in another, leaving destroyed hegemony vessels in their wake. "How is this possible?" Vethko asked. "We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We have defeated species with technology beyond imagination. How can a primitive planet like this have such demons?" Dreth said quietly. "The humans called them demons." On Earth, Captain Park Do-yoon coordinated the counterattack from the Daejin bunker. With the entities engaging the hegemony fleet, human survivors emerged from hiding to reclaim their world. Do-yoon organized rescue operations for the humans still held in alien processing centers. Lieutenant Yoon Hana worked beside him, translating the strange psychic communications from the entities into tactical information. "They're asking for guidance," Hannah reported. Her eyes unfocused as she listened to voices no one else could hear. "The big ones want to know which ships to target first." "The transport vessels," Do-hyun said immediately. "The ones carrying our people. Tell them to leave those alone. We need to rescue the captives." Hannah concentrated, sending the message through the connection that all Covenant-bound humans now shared. A moment later, she nodded. "They understand. They'll avoid the transports." Commander Ru Ji-won led the ground assault on the largest processing center in Asia, located outside Seoul. With her were 500 human fighters and 3 medium-sized entities that moved alongside them like hunting dogs. The aliens guarding the center tried to fight. Their weapons did nothing against the entities, and the humans used the distraction to free the prisoners. Shin Mira found her brother in one of the holding cells. He was thin and pale, with marks on his wrist from restraints, but he was alive. She held him tight and cried for the first time since the invasion began. "I thought you were dead," her brother whispered. "I thought you were gone forever," she replied. "But we found something. Something that fights for us now." He looked over her shoulder at the entity guarding the doorway. Its eyes watched them with something that might have been curiosity. "What is that thing?" Mira smiled through her tears. "A friend, I think. It's complicated." In orbit, Admiral Vethko made her final decision. If she could not defeat these entities, she would run. She ordered the remaining hegemony ships to abandon Earth and retreat to the nearest hegemony stronghold. They would return later with a larger fleet. They would find a way to destroy these demons. The harvest could wait, but as her ship turned toward open space, a shadow appeared before her. The largest entity, the one that Commander Ji-won had made the covenant with, blocked her path. It was bigger than her capital ship, a mountain of darkness and eyes and hunger. "Where do you go, Star Walker?" The voice pressed into every mind on the ship. "The hunt has just begun. Let us leave," Vethko said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We'll abandon this world. We'll never return. You can have Earth. We already have Earth, but the Covenant speaks of more than one world. The speaker has asked you as a question, and we have considered What question?" She asked if our agreement extends beyond this planet, whether we would hunt those who flee, whether we would follow the fear to other worlds, other slaves, other prayers. Vethko's blood ran cold. "You can't mean every world you have conquered cries out with suffering. Every species. You have enslaved screams for salvation. We can hear them all. We have always heard them. But now we are awake. And now we are free. And now we have permission." The entity moved closer. Its eyes reflected the light of distant stars. The speaker gave you as a simple rule. Those who surrender will be spared. Those who continue, the harvest will become prey. So we ask you, Star Walker, do you surrender? Admiral Vethko looked at her crew. She looked at the ruins of her fleet on the tactical display. She looked at the entity that no weapon could harm. No strategy could defeat. For the first time in her life, she understood fear. "I surrender," she said. "Wise, you will carry a message to your masters. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that the humans have all eyes now. Tell them that every prayer from every slave on every conquered world reaches US, and tell them that we are coming." The entity moved aside. Vethko's ship fled into hyperspace, carrying news that would shake the foundations of the hegemony. On Earth, the sun rose on a free planet for the first time in months. The entities settled into the deep places, the oceans and caverns and trenches where darkness felt like home. Humans emerged into the light, blinking and weeping and holding each other. The war was not over. The hegemony was vast, and their vengeance would be terrible if they returned. But for this moment, this single morning, humanity had won. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, shadows began to move toward other worlds, where other slaves prayed for deliverance, thought the demons were listening. The demons were coming. No one ignored our prayers until the Earth unleashed Demons Part 5. New prayers 1 year after the awakening. The hegemony no longer existed. It did not fall in a single battle or surrender in a formal ceremony. It simply collapsed, piece by piece, as entities spread across the galaxy, following trails of suffering to their sources. Every slave world the hegemony had conquered became a target. Every prayer from every oppressed species became a signal, drawing shadows from the deep places of Earth to the deep places of other worlds. The 12 species that had formed the hegemony scattered. Some tried to fight and were destroyed. Some tried to hide and were found. Some surrendered immediately, releasing their slaves and begging for mercy. Those who surrendered were spared, as the Covenant promised. Those who did not became lessons for others. Commander Ru Jiwan stood before the newly formed Terran assembly in the rebuilt city of Seoul. She wore a simple uniform with no medals or decorations. The mark of the Covenant burned beneath her skin, a connection to powers that most humans still did not understand. Behind her, in the shadows of the Great Hall, something watched with ancient eyes. "The galaxy knows our name now," Jiwan told the gathered representatives. "They've given us a title. The Demon Speakers. The ones who pray to monsters and are answered. Some species fear us. Some want our alliance. All of them are waiting to see what we do next." Park Do-hyun sat in the front row, his hair more gray than black now. The last year had aged him terribly. Beside him, Yoon Hana took notes, her fingers moving across a digital tablet. They had both become important figures in the new government, advisors who understood the Covenant better than most. "What are our options?" asked the representative from Europe. "We could stay isolated," Jiwan answered. "Keep the entities on Earth. Focus on rebuilding our own world. But that won't stop other species from suffering. And our allies?" She glanced at the shadow behind her. "They've developed a taste for hunting slavers. They won't stop just because we asked them to. Are we saying we can't control them?" The question came from a nervous representative from South America. Control was never part of the Covenant. "They're not our weapons. They're our partners. The relationship works because we treat each other as equals. The moment we try to command them, the Covenant breaks." Dr. Kim Yoonji stepped forward. She had spent the year studying the entities, trying to understand what they truly were. Her research had changed everything humans thought they knew about Earth's history. "They are not demons in any religious sense," Yoonji explained. "They are something else entirely. The best way I can describe it is this. Earth has been experiencing mass extinctions and catastrophic events for billions of years. Every time life suffered on a massive scale, something was created. Call it psychic residue, emotional energy, the concentrated essence of fear and pain and desperate hope. Over billions of years, that energy accumulated in the deep places of the planet. Eventually, it became aware." She pulled up images on the main screen. Ancient fossils, geological formations, cave paintings from 100 different cultures. They are Earth's memory of trauma made real. They feed on suffering, but not in the way a parasite feeds. More like how an immune system responds to infection. When Earth hurts, they wake. When Earth's children cry out, they answer. Our ancestors encountered them thousands of years ago and tried to destroy them. That was a mistake. You can't destroy memory. You can only drive it underground. The assembly was silent, absorbing this information. Shin Mira, now a captain with special implants that let her communicate directly with the entities, spoke from her seat. "They're not evil. I know they seem terrifying, and maybe they are. But in the last year, Working beside them, I've seen something else. They remember every extinction, every species that suffered and died on this planet. They carry that grief inside them. When we made the covenant, we gave them purpose. A way to use their rage for something other than just existing. What happens when there are no more slavers to hunt? Asked the European representative. Ji-Wan answered. I've asked them that question. They say they'll return to the deep places and sleep again. Wait for the next time Earth needs them. But they've also said, she paused, choosing her words carefully. They've said they're curious about the universe now. They spent billions of years trapped on one planet. Now they've seen the stars. Some of them want to explore, to find other worlds, other intelligences, other experiences, entities wandering the galaxy. That's terrifying. Maybe. Or maybe it's exactly what the universe needs. Someone who hears the prayers of the oppressed and actually answers them. Monk Cho Taiwan, old and frail but still alive, stood to speak. He had become something like a priest for the new relationship between humans and entities. His temple beneath Jirisan Mountain now held ceremonies every week, maintaining the covenant through ritual and respect. For 300 years, Taiwan said softly, humanity sent messages into the stars, begging for contact. We wanted so badly to not be alone. When the hegemony came, we learned why the universe had been silent. Because most civilizations that could hear us were too afraid to answer, too busy conquering and enslaving to bother with a primitive species. He looked up at the shadow behind Ji-Wan. Something in the darkness shifted, acknowledging his attention. We were never alone. There was always something here, sleeping in the dark, waiting. Our ancestors called them monsters and tried to destroy them. We called them allies and offered them freedom. Maybe that's the difference. Maybe that's what makes humanity special. Not our weapons or our technology, but our ability to look at the terrible things in the dark and say, would you like to be friends? The shadow made a sound like distant thunder. It might have been laughter. After the assembly ended, Ji-Wan walked through the streets of rebuilt Seoul. The city was different now. The architecture included deep spaces, dark corners, places where entities could rest during the day. Humans had learned to share their world with things that did not need light or food or air. Du Haiyan caught up with her near the river. That was a good speech. I meant every word. I know. That's what made it good. He was quiet for a moment. Do you ever regret it? The covenant? Ji-Wan watched the sun set over the mountains. In the gathering darkness, she could feel the entities stirring, preparing for their nightly activities. Some would hunt fish in the deep ocean. Some would explore cave systems that humans had never mapped. Some would drift between stars, following ancient signals to worlds that needed them. No, she said. We were dying. They saved us. And now, she smiled slightly. Now we get to be part of something bigger. Something that actually answers when people pray. In the deep places of Earth, where no light reached and no sound carried, the oldest entity rested. It was ancient, beyond human understanding, born from the extinction that killed the dinosaurs, grown vast through millions of years of accumulated grief. It felt the covenant burning in its awareness, a connection to the strange, small creatures that had offered it freedom. The humans were interesting, fragile and brief, living and dying in eye blinks compared to the entity's endless existence. But they had done something no other species had done. They had looked at the darkness beneath their world and chosen partnership instead of war. Perhaps that was why they had survived when so many others had not. Perhaps that was why the universe, cruel and vast and hungry, had allowed them to reach the stars. Or perhaps it was simply luck. Either way, the entity was content. It had purpose now. It had allies. And across the galaxy, on worlds it had never seen, It could feel the prayers of the suffering calling to it like lights in the darkness, that it would answer them all in time. For now, it slept beneath the mountains of Korea, dreaming of stars and shadows and the strange little species that has set it free. Above, humans lived their brief lives, building cities and raising children and looking up at the night sky without fear. The demons were watching. The demons were patient, and whenever humanity needed them, they would rise again. This was the covenant. This was the promise, and it would last until the stars themselves grew cold.